Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Explicit Measures Podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Hello, everybody.
'Twas the night before Christmas, 4 days before Christmas.
And what we're doing is still talking about Power BI.
Or Fabric. I mean, hey,
Fabric.
the
Whatever.
conversations have exploded. So many different directions all the time.
So today's main topic here is there's an article from Microsoft that I'll put here in the chat window. This is a blog announcement from the Fabric blog talking about Semantic Link, data validation using a feature from Python, which is called Great Expectations, which is a library that enables you to be able to care about or look at the quality of the data in your tables that you have. So I'll put the article link here for later in the discussion. That will be coming up shortly. So before we do that, let's do some news. Some news happened this week, which we didn't talk on Tuesday about, but we're going to talk about it now. We have a release for Power BI Desktop. It was a little bit delayed. I believe it was published a little bit later than normal. Typically, I think the blog post was published on the 12th, and the desktop didn't actually get released till the 18th. So there's a little miscommunication there, or something broke at the last minute, and they're like, wait a minute, whoops. So they try to coordinate all this together. It must be difficult to coordinate all of this stuff at the same time and having everything published around the world at the same time, because you don't want to have the desktop published before the blog is out and no one knows what's going on. And anyways, let's talk about the new features that are coming out.
You complain about our
summary
cycles. If we complain about our deploying to one place, can you imagine?
Oh yeah, can you imagine
a release coming out of Microsoft? How many different touch points in different areas? Man, kudos to those guys.
All the regions that the blog
yeah, we're not complaining.
Update.
Yeah. Like you've got to have your stuff in time to have this and this and this group pick it up, and then that, and everybody, and then like it gets,
the log of dependencies. I cannot fathom.
Well, people are out. I mean, I know this now. Microsoft, like every other company, takes off around Thanksgiving and through December. So those are the months where people leave. They're out of the office. This means all the work needed or anything that was being worked on to get released for January doesn't get done. So this is why January doesn't have any releases, and there's not going to be a release for Power BI Desktop in January, and won't be any releases until February.
Never has been, never will be.
Give people a break,
I'm okay with that.
I'll take one too.
Excellent. So what features stood out to you? Or anything that stood out to you in this release? I have one, but I'll let you guys go first. Tommy, what do you think? What is picking up on your radar here, or something interesting to look at?
Well, Mike, it's so easy, and I mean they geared this exactly towards you. It's new storytelling in PowerPoint suggested content. We know.
Yeah.
I think even the blog says how much Mike Carlo loves suggested content. How much they love PowerPoint. So the
new title should be, the title is Storytelling in PowerPoint for Mike Carlo. Suggested content.
Mike DiCarlo.
All right.
Yes.
Data Mike.
Suggested content by Mike Carlo.
Don't put it in PowerPoint.
So the gist of this is when you add Power BI and the add-in to the slide, it's actually going to scan the title of the slide, so the content outside of just the object of the Power BI widget, and say, hey, what are you trying to do here? Maybe there's a report here that's recommended. It's kind of neat. I'll admit I haven't played around too much with it. I'm still adding the link because I still have a very direct visual report that I'm using. But I think this is a good place this is going. And I continue to love to see the integration with PowerPoint and Power BI. I don't remember which episode, but if you want to learn more, we actually did a whole episode, one of my favorite episodes to date, just around the PowerPoint feature or the Power BI feature within PowerPoint. So kudos.
It's okay. Just okay. Seth, any features that stood out to you?
That's it.
I mean, it's more of a quality of life one. Cleaning up certain aspects, like the styling on column and bar charts is, like, hey, having more options to visually represent data. Always a big fan of that. I didn't get to plug in at all and look at the alerting on Power BI reports of Data Activator, but it looks like they're plugging in some of the Fabric components, which is cool. But hey, if you're really talking about excitement, paginated, man. Paginated ability to search and sort in paginated reports. Dude, a little quality of life stuff like that goes a long way. So
I think
honestly, I'm gonna
our
land there
experience-
for top ads.
I think paginated reports is an underrated feature in general. I think it's I think people are building Power BI reports, but in reality, they actually want paginated reports. And actually, now that I'm looking at and working with the new Explore Your Data feature, and you can now see that on top of your reports. Now you can actually go right into Explore the data. I really like this ability to create these tables and figure it out from a table and see just let me focus in on the data model and just a single table. Let me look there only.
Yeah,
We
explore
need-
off
yeah.
the data, off the semantic model.
Off the semantic model.
Yes.
Yeah.
We need
So
to solve something right now. To my left, paginated. To my right, paginated. Which
Yep.
one is it? I just heard two different. How do we?
it's paginated. Paginated? That says paginated.
Which one's right? This is vital.
It's PBIX.
Mike originally is from not Midwest, right? So his
Oh, this is a
pronunciation I think,
Midwest.
is slightly different. I don't know. I
Seth,
mean,
okay,
if you
actually,
wanted to, Tommy,
Paginated?
it's
Is
interesting
it
that
bag or bag?
yeah,
Tommy, it's
Paginated.
interesting you're leaning
Paginated.
into the proper enunciation of certain words here
Love the
because
king of
if you want to go,
Let's go.
we could lean into here.
I think we might want to skip this conversation. I think I know where Seth's going on this one.
I'll meet you on
Like
your
you
roof.
see that? You're seeing that already?
I saw that already. Let's talk about
All right, let's move on.
specific
Let's
things.
move on here.
All right. Let's move on to so another one here that has been kind of a big mess, and I think it's getting a little bit better here, is the on-object interactions has been really painful to work with. Just in general, I've turned it on. I've just figured this is the way we're going to be. But there is some new default setups for on-object interaction, and for the people who are classically trained in Power BI, they're letting you leave the panes open. And one thing that really annoyed me was I think there was a combination of a bug and or the functionality of them. If you closed one of those windows, the little icon on the far right hand side would just disappear because it was an X. It was an X to like remove the pane of the window. And everyone's going to turn on all the icons, and they're just going to use that icon list as just a menu. Like that's just going to be what's happening. Well, you would click the X, it would just disappear, and you'd have to open up the menu, click the thing, put it back up. I mean, just the whole UI experience was like, this is totally wrong. I don't understand what's going on here. I want the pane to be open. I want it to go away when I want it to be open and closed. It's weird. Anyways, they fixed all that. So now you can shrink it as opposed to deleting the icon and removing it from the list. And you can, by default, make sure those panes are always expanded.
I know.
Because that's what I do every single time I work on a visual.
Yeah.
So like I drop, even if I don't put any data in the visual, I'll put the visual down and then I go to the semantic model pane, data pane. I guess it's called data pane still. I don't even know what they keep renaming things every day, but then you look through there and find the columns you want. And then I tick the columns that I need and then boom, the visual shows up. Like that's what you do. I don't understand why we had to make it so extra complicated to get visuals on the page.
Yeah, I'll admit, Mike, to your point, there's been a lot of times I've been close to throwing my mouse across the room. I've lost so much real estate with the visual. Choosing the visual is larger. The space between visuals is larger.
Yep.
It's been frustrating, and I'm really happy to see that they are making updates based on feedback by the community here.
Yes. And in the desktop, like when desktop runs up for the new version, you have, there's a little menu that pops up and it says, I think the wording is good, but it could be better on the menu that pops up. You have two options: keep the current setup the way it lives right now, or you can use a more classic pane setup. And I would argue it was keep the new stupid setup or use the correct version of how desktop should work. So
why don't they ask you to write these things, Mike?
I know.
I know.
It would be so much better on these dialogue boxes.
Hey guys, we're gonna invest a lot of money in building this new thing. let's call it the stupid setup. Like we don't actually want anybody to use it. Mike, what do you think? I think we should call it the stupid
Sell it.
setup so nobody
Yeah.
ever uses
No,
it.
it should be
Oh.
power stupid setup. It should have the word power in it.
And it will say their name. No, it'll say, "Hey, dum dum."
So, yes, I'm very happy that they're fixing this one. So it's definitely going the right direction. Microsoft has been listening to a lot of this one. I believe Adam Saxton and Guy Cube did a video on this one, and there was an overwhelming response from the community like, this is not helping. I can't get it. This is not working for me. It's all broken. And I remember, I think Adam actually responded in like a message, either in LinkedIn or Twitter, like, hey, we've heard your feedback. We know this is really a mess. We're going to really work hard to figure out how to fix. I'm like, okay, good. We're really focusing on listening to what people are saying about this feature. It's okay, but it could be a lot better. So I definitely feel like this is a move in the right direction. Now,
I also think that it is a perfect example of why putting things out in preview first is a good idea.
Very
good move.
idea.
It's a good move because it doesn't. It doesn't happen often where you get a preview feature and then there are really large changes to it. Like it typically goes in incremental steps and like, oh, okay, add this in here and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, just resoundingly, I don't know of anybody that was just instantly thrilled with on object, and I'm glad they took the feedback. They probably also took their metrics that how many people were actually using it, and the frustration, and they're adapting it, and that's a good thing. And I'm glad that they're plugged into the community the way they are, like you're saying, because ultimately it'll come out to be hopefully a much better experience.
Yep. The other one I'll point out here that is interesting to me, I'm not sure where this fits in, and this is more of a nuanced and developer side of things. Inside the developer area of the release, they're talking about there's a new API that allows custom visuals to obtain an Azure Active Directory access token through single sign-on. This is going to help you facilitate secure, efficient user contextual operations, and the API will be controlled by a global admin setting.
Where is this one? What is this?
I know, right? It's in the developers section, and it says the feature is a Power BI custom visuals authentication API
for custom visuals.
I don't know if this is like a licensing mechanism that they're trying to apply here. Like, hey, this visual is authorized to be used by these people. Therefore, we can authorize you inside a custom visual now. I don't know what this is really here for, but it seems interesting. And this is a very different, and for those who have built custom visuals, they are very sandboxed. You can't talk to anything. It's like if you want a certified visual, Microsoft really closes you down to a very tight, controlled area. So this will be interesting to see what this means and how custom developers will use this to help build custom visuals.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I haven't been keeping up with custom visuals, but that would seem to imply a company.
Yes.
UPN.
Yes.
Right. The user principal name, like that's in Azure Active Directory, would be able to be linked to it in some way for an organization.
So I'm not sure what that means.
It makes a lot of sense because we know, even with third-party plugins and all these things, there are a lot of companies that have very hard restrictions around what you can and can't upload or use.
Yes.
And that's like that gets proliferated everywhere in your Power BI report. One, and two, some of the licensing on the custom visuals is tied to how widespread you're using it or how many users can actually use it.
Exactly.
I wonder if they're going to plug that in there.
Yeah. I think there's something else coming on. It looks like there's some development around that area. So that's also something very interesting. One thing I don't see on this list here that I do think is very important to note here as well is they didn't really notice in this list, and this is maybe in the Fabric blog, maybe that didn't come in the Power BI blog, but Power BI Desktop now gets a new M connector for Delta Lake.table. That is a new connector that exists now. So Power BI Desktop can now read Parquet files directly without the need of Spark or SQL Serverless. I've confirmed this. It's awesome. And I think that feature alone is a major game changer for this December update.
What is it using then? Your local machine?
It's using I have to explain this a couple ways here. So when you talk to Delta tables, you need some sort of compute to talk to it.
Yeah.
Traditionally, it has been Spark or SQL Serverless. Those are the only two that we were aware of.
Yeah.
Then Microsoft added the ability for data flows to read and write Delta tables. So then data flows got this feature. Now what you're seeing is the Vertipec engine itself, the desktop Vertipec engine compute that's on your desktop machine, it can now read and write, or it can read, it doesn't write, it just reads Delta tables. So to me, this is just adding another compute engine that Microsoft is building the feature in to just read these Delta tables, which I think is huge. I think this is massive. I've already connected it to things that I've used in Databricks and in Unity Catalog. When you make Delta tables in a blob storage account, you can connect anything you want. I don't require a SQL or Databricks endpoint to read the data. And it appears, based on Chris Webb's blog, this new function allows what they're going to call partition pruning. So if you partition the data the same way you want to incrementally load it in your data models, you no longer need to go spend money on another compute engine just to read the data to load it into Power BI. You can just push Power BI at it. It will read the metadata files. It will then grab the only partitions it needs during incremental refresh. It basically filtered by dates, right? So partitioned by dates. And then you can load the data in and only the partitions you want.
So when you're connecting this locally, it's running off your local machine.
Correct. And
but
it will
when you
run off of
it runs off the capacity.
It will run off it still runs the capacity, but now I need one capacity to run stuff as opposed to two or more. Right? So
because at this point we don't care, right? Like prior, we would say the premium capacity was analysis services, right? It was the semantic model engine.
Yes.
And now they've just kind of lumped it all together.
Correct.
So who knows the capacity itself is spool up the cluster, spool up the whatever,
Correct.
all the things for the different processes.
Yes. But this also this feature also opens, but right now you're talking about this is a Fabric only thing.
Yeah.
Right? This very feature opens up the ability for you to do this in Pro and Premium per user. You now don't need Fabric to read Delta tables from other places in your organization. So to me, this is another decision point here. I have to figure out why, like what this is doing and how this is changing things, because this might let me stay on Premium per user for longer without having to go over to Fabric, because I can still read the Delta tables in their raw form with partition pruning. This is a big change, I think, here. I don't think people understand how important this is.
Well, you keep digging, Mike, and you build a solution, and I'll get it.
I'll steal it. Yes,
it's not stealing; it's just using.
I've been doing it.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to need to do a blog about this one because it's definitely very technical in how to get everything to work, so that it pulls all the data together. But it is very slick. I've been able to make shortcuts into other things inside Databricks, and then again, shortcuts in OneLake is a different feature in all of itself. But from desktop, I've been able to successfully connect to other things outside of the Fabric ecosystem and make them work. So that is a very interesting and very intriguing pattern to be able to be using.
Mike, I will keep my predictions to myself here, but the only thing I'll say is you are right here. This is one of those underlying features. It doesn't seem like a big wow game changing. The lights are spotlighted onto this, and it's like but what this can do, and I think what this is going to evolve into, is going to be an integral part of our workflow in a few years.
Yep.
And just part of, there's going to be training around this.
Yes,
exactly. You need your process. Do you're using this, right? That's going to be the question.
Yes. This is
yeah.
And I think you're right, Tommy. I think this is an inflection point of, I can't remember the world before I didn't have access to Delta tables. Once we turned on Delta tables, the entire infrastructure, what I do, how I build stuff, is now greatly changing.
Right.
And just by adding this one little feature, this also means if you're building things with Azure Synapse, you don't need Azure Synapse anymore. This feature alone has killed Azure Synapse in my mind from a pattern of using a pipeline, loading some raw data, manipulating it into tables, and then getting the tables into Power BI. You don't need Synapse now. You can do a lot of this now directly with Azure Data Factory, which in my opinion, Azure Data Factory is a more robust tool, has more features than the Synapse pipelines. And Azure Data Factory has a lot more features than the Fabric pipelines, just because it's newer. So like,
and
anyways, it's very interesting to see how this is kind of like shaping and coming together.
And we're seeing that in our article today. Speaking of giving Synapse its retirement, so
yeah, let's do that. So this is a good transition.
Send Synapse up north, so to speak.
We're gonna go send Synapse by the way of the PBIX.
No, we're not getting rid of PBIX.
Is it PBIX or is it PBIX? Is it E's or is it I?
PBIX. I'll stay with paginated.
That's what everyone says when they see my hat. I have a hat that has PBIX on it, and they're like, "What is that? PBIX?" I'm like, "Actually, that's a PBIX. That's okay. You don't know, but if you know, you know. If you don't, I know you don't know." So, one of those things. Let's jump into our article for today. So, the article for today is the Semantic Link, data validation using great expectations. So, Tommy, I think you might want to just start off with just a little bit of. Let's talk about what is Semantic Link. Let's start there first and figure out what that's doing. And then we should talk about this package. And again, this is not this is funny to me a little bit in some ways. Microsoft is claiming these packages that are kind of open source. Like this is a Great Expectations is a Python package, which is made by the broader community in Python. And then Microsoft's like, hey, look at this. You can use Great Expectations on top of all your other stuff. So anyways, with that being said, Tommy, give us an overview of what Semantic Link is looking like.
So Semantic Link is a feature that actually allows us to connect to semantic models, also known, and I love this in the documentation, as the diamond layer. So the medallion approach. I don't know if you caught that. I was like, ooh,
I did
diamond
catch it.
Layer.
I was like,
what could this be?
Well, I'm only going to build in platinum now. How about that now? Like it's going to be beyond diamond.
When will platinum come out? Yeah, I got very excited about that. So
I'm waiting for obsidian.
Yeah, I was saying I don't even have a cobblestone layer or like the jaded moss. I don't have. These are things I don't have yet. I don't have these layers yet.
So I guess this medallion's getting a little wider here, but
yes,
like diamond layer.
It's the Minecraft medallion layer. Right. It's bronze, silver, gold, diamond, obsidian.
Right. But the Semantic Link allows us to connect to those semantic models, Power BI data sets, to Synapse data science features, and simply allows you to query in data science applications, specifically in Fabric, but can be outside of Fabric, of the semantic model, the tables, the measures, and allows you to do that in a Jupyter notebook, and anywhere notebooks are found. To me, this is one of my, if you were to say the top 10 Fabric features that came out this year, or possibly the top 5 game changing, this is one of them. Because this allows us with a Python package. You said Semantic Link is also a Python package. Allows you to connect to all the parts of your model through a Jupyter notebook or through Python, and actually, in a sense, shape it there. So it's already created. Great Expectations now is the other side of the coin. Specifically for data scientists and data engineers, that actually is kind of, to your point earlier, it meets data meets specific quality standards before it can be used, and we can do a lot with it, ensuring data quality.
Now, I do think, Tommy, to your point here, this is definitely a game changer, 100%. I will also echo, this is a notebook Spark level experience. It's you're writing Python, but you're writing Python in notebooks inside Fabric. So right away, you're already at a level of, this is like super codey. You have to understand kind of what's going on there. But what I find is, particularly around tools that Microsoft develops, right? They have tools like data flows, which are very powerful in their own right. But it's a lot of UI, it's a lot of clicking. It makes it easy for average business users to kind of like learn data engineering and start doing data engineering things. To me, yes, when you write straight code, the potential or the possibility of doing things is way higher. You have way more opportunity here in this stuff. So cool. However, this is very technical in nature. So I will say that. So be aware, if you're not aware of Semantic Link, the article that we put down below is actually really good. It does a really good job explaining what this is, but some things that I would caution you around is when you're running these notebooks, you're using this thing called a pip install, which is a language where you're installing something on the cluster while it runs. So not wrong, not saying you shouldn't do it, but whatever version of Spark Microsoft is running, Semantic Link and Great Expectations, these are packages that are outside of the Microsoft ecosystem, and you have to install them on your clusters so they can run. So there's actually a whole bunch of other things you can do as well, where you can like pip install things or have packages available before you turn on the cluster, and you can set up, Spark settings and all kinds of other cool stuff too. So this is very cool. I really like it, but can get really technical very quick. I just want to put like a disclaimer on this on this topic at the so
if
far.
you have someone who's already has this, guess what, Mike? There's a whole other podcast we do just around Python now with Power BI, but
totally.
you can actually set up environments in your workspace, so you can have it pre-installed too.
Yep.
But no, and this is that's a good point, Mike, because again, we've always been focused Power BI and data modeling, DAX, and kind of this one lane of business intelligence.
And when you download desktop, you get it all. Like it's like one thing, one installer. Like I get one file, like boom, you have everything you need there, with the exception of any external tools you want to go add, right? So traditionally, everything is very simple, but this is just a more technical piece of this.
Right. I find it interesting. Well, I'll back up just a sec, just talking about this, because if you're one of those people who has always just been in the BI space and your DAX, your data modeling, your Power Query, and should you expand to Python? We have an episode around that in terms of learning that skill. Please check it out. So I just want to kind of reference that in terms of kind of like, who are you listening to this? Just because you may not know this doesn't mean you can't.
Correct.
A few things here with focusing on this great expectation side of things, because I believe we've talked about semantic model a lot.
Well,
there's a big part. Yeah.
Before we weigh in that one there,
sure.
I'd be curious, Seth, your opinions on what you've seen, or have you had a chance to play with Semantic Link? I'm just kind of curious if you feel, what use cases do you observe potentially around being able to directly hit the data model or the XML endpoint using a Semantic Link type thing?
It's a good question. I think I'm confused, especially as it relates to the data quality conversation. And I would ask the audience, or you to enlighten me, right? Like the where I'm having a hard time peeling myself out is there's the data quality confirmation aspect of like, okay, I have a model. I want to ensure that, as data is connected to it on a daily basis, it's checking all the balances, it's, et cetera. But like this article does it, Semantic Link model does it. Like it seems we're mixing pre-model work conversations in with what should be the final product. And that's what I don't get.
This is why I wanted your opinion on this whole thing. So let me step back just for some Semantic Link things. Another couple comments here before we move on to, I think, where you're going with this, Seth, which I agree with. One area here is, I think Semantic Link allows you to interrogate the model by using evaluate statements, basically writing a DAX statement that runs against the model. One use case I could see here is this enables you to use the DMVs of the XML endpoint. So if you want to document all the measures that are in your model, if you want to document the size or anything that's related in the dynamic management views, DMVs, I think that's what that means, you get data out. So for one, you can actually extract all the relationships inside your model. And there's actually another article from Microsoft talking about using Semantic Link and Microsoft bringing BI and data science together. And they're actually talking in this article where they're actually grabbing information from the model and they're able to provide, what is it called here? They're calling it a, like it's almost like a diagram, finding the dependencies of information. And you can literally diagram out the dependencies inside your model of what's building what. And that can come out of your models. So anyways, I just want to make that point first. Let's go back to your comment, Seth, around, data quality and where this makes sense. My understanding, again, I haven't dug in too far with Great Expectations. In this example that Microsoft provides, they use the Semantic Link to go access a table of data. I'm going to go grab time and something else, total units ratio, and then it produces a divide statement and basically returns a table of information. Here's time, here's all my ratios. In there, they're able to use the Great Expectations, and inside Great Expectations, you're able to say, for this column, we expect the data range to be a number, and between this minimum value and this maximum value. So it sounds to me like this is a data test, a test of data that you can apply to a process. So where you use this, if this is happening in dev, test, maybe in production workloads, or happening before you publish things, I think this is a great portion of that. So that's I think it's more of a data quality checking thing. Is how I see it right now.
Okay, that was the keyword, right? I have a test model, right? Like I have a version that I'm going to apply changes to, or hypothetically, I guess my point though is here. Even if I have a test model, are you running the same volumes through your test models that you are your production one?
This is going to be this. I think will be the question, right? How
Like,
so?
because
let's
I
back
like your point. I like your point,
Yep.
which is okay. I'm in a test realm. I'm making changes. I'm doing data validation. This is, but this is still like where, just as far as like quality is concerned,
Mhm.
I'm going to ensure that whatever my change from a data perspective is
Yes.
valid, even though a lot of what we're doing is validating code changes.
Correct.
You're validating data. That's fine.
Yep. This is data ops to some degree.
But I also
John Kursky's, baby here.
I'm not familiar, nor do I in most cases push the same volumes or the same exact data sets through my models.
Okay.
So like this is where
Yes.
that's why I have data quality pipelines that are part of the production workload, because that's where you're validating your data, and you're like, the expectation thing looks super cool.
Yes.
Right. But I'm not putting that on my final product. I'm doing that before I produce my final product.
I think yes and no, and I'm going
No,
to talk
yes
about
for me, maybe no
okay.
for you.
There's a different use case here besides exactly what's in the document itself, which I can identify that I wish I had this years ago. What has been the biggest issue when we've tried to find solutions around for Power BI data sets back in the day? If by the way, if you're referring to a data set 5 years ago, is that still a semantic link? I don't know. Another conversation for another day. But
it's always been a semantic link, Tommy.
It's
always been that way.
So fine. So, of input of data quality checks, tried multiple ways to create data quality dashboards.
Yes.
Around user input in CRM systems, or how people are inputting data. Are people inputting the right information? Where are we missing blank values? That's been a struggle to try to do that with an already created model in Power BI, not just the tables, but on my already created model, my relationships. Where are the DIMs missing in my facts? Other way around.
Yep.
So this still matches here. Obviously, it's not the same exact workflow that you both are referring to, but this still checks out in terms of something that I know organizations are looking for. Like, where are our blanks in our DIMs? Do we have all the keys? Are people inputting the data the way they should be? This can allow organizations to do so, because I think there are enterprise workflows around data quality, and there's mid-size workflow around data quality here on just what are the I don't want to say quick fixes, but what are those items going on in our business that we know people are not inputting or updating statuses the right way. That's been, I don't want to say impossible, but nearly impossible to do with already created model, because the endpoint was the model. And now we have with Semantic Link, I can create a data frame. I can create access that semantic model in a data frame. I can use Great Expectations or other libraries to do so. That's, to me, where the strong value is. So I'm not saying the yes and no to your point, Seth, but this is a wider scope of data quality than what's outlined here.
So I love your point, Tommy, and I would 100% agree with this in a production environment. Or let me paint some pictures here, because I think what Seth's struggling with is a slightly different use case around where we're testing data quality versus where I think you're speaking to, Tommy, is your data quality is something slightly different. So I believe there's two places we come from here. If we think about I'm working only in production, or I'm talking about production only. Tommy, what you're saying, I think sounds 100% true, right? I have made semantic models in the past. They have been published. I don't have any way of really vetting the data other than going into a report and trying to make all the tables that I care about inside that report. To me, there could be, and there should be in some cases, let's think about it this way. There is in different organizations, you'll have dev, test, and production. There's three things you need to version when you're talking about three different environments when it comes to the data warehousing of things. The three things are, you need to version the infrastructure code, which is handled by deployment pipelines. I can literally move the artifacts between different things, like move a lakehouse from dev to test. Then there's the second layer of doing the engineering code, right? So the engineering code is the pipeline, the notebooks, anything that's creating tables of data. That's the engineering code that's used to generate the data. And then there's the version of the data itself. Okay, so here's where things I think get tricky. If you have dev, test, and prod things, and the source of data is always prod, right? So the source of where I'm pulling data from is production, and I'm building a dev version of a model and report, and then I'm moving over to test, and I'm still pointing to prod, but I'm just pulling down information there.
Not uncommon.
Not uncommon. It happens. But I would say in larger organizations, as the organization increases in size, what you find is the dev environment points to the dev server, because, and the reason is where it gets cost effective, is I don't want to take a hard copy of all data from production and move all production data into the development server just to solve a small problem with that issue.
100%.
Well, and in many organizations, like those are completely different data sets.
So yeah,
Like
they're scrubbed, they're clean, there's
like
doesn't even match.
reason,
Yes.
Yeah, like none of the like those environments
Yes.
are not just your versions of your report. The entire data set is completely different.
And so this is the
the
challenge what we're talking about.
Right, because the volumes that we're playing with nowadays, right? Like in your production system are costly. You're not going to just run, unless you absolutely have to, run those same volumes in a test environment.
Agreed. So and with that though, so let's keep going down this path here, right? So if your dev, test, prod environments all point to a version of prod or the actual things that is prod, then yes, great expectations can work all the way through. You can test your data quality and test right before you get to production. However, that's usually not the case as data sets grow in size. And so this was where things become much more challenging. And I would argue here the patterns should be the same. So Semantic Link, as far as doing data quality things, there's no reason why you can't deploy a change into test and have a there's no way you can't deploy to test and have like a version of a pattern around how the data is being built, right? So you know, like for example, let me give you a clear example. I'm going to take February of 2022. I'm going to make sure in all my environments I have at least a representative copy of data from February 2022. That way, when I make changes to measures, I should be able to test the data and run Semantic Link and Great Expectations against that data and say, okay, if I group this data by these categories, I should have this output of information. And that is where Great Expectation comes in for a checking of the data. Also, you can also use Great Expectations inside your production environment where you are going to have data drift. People will enter data incorrectly into your source systems and it will make its way into your reporting. So you can also apply expectations when you refresh your data set. Right behind that, you can run Great Expectations again to verify, do these numbers make sense? Did we miss a lot of information? Did something drastically change? And that way the BI team knows this stuff is happening before the business finds out.
So in this case, I think, so let me ask this clarifying question. From what you're reading and looking at this, can Great Expectations, and I think I'm reading it, hang on. It can read measures.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
You can literally.
Okay.
It's so, but that's a Semantic Link though. So Semantic Link,
because
Semantic Link is allowing you to run DAX evaluate statements against the model and then
Yep.
you can get out from it everything you need, and then that
to
becomes a
me-
data frame,
to
and
me,
then you can run the game.
That's
Yeah,
what
a
changes
big-
this entire conversation for me. Like, and I just didn't. I wasn't cataloging that, and the reason is like that's one of my anybody's biggest black hole. We can have as many data quality measures as like data quality points, checking values going into our models, but one of the biggest pain points is, did something change or shift? Like, you may have a value.
Yes.
Did the value, like, did somebody introduce a new value and it no longer works within the measures?
Yes.
Right. So if this is saying, hey, we now have a way to quality check the final product all the time for our end customers and get out ahead of any of the changes, because we know a ton of development has
Yes.
gone into the model that is just kind of in that black hole space. Like, nobody's doing validation on that.
No,
except
no
your
way.
customer, where the
Yes.
visual all of a sudden isn't working. So now this is starting to make a lot more sense to me, because if that's plugging into the entirety of the semantic model,
Yes.
instead of just the tables that put up or like make up the semantic model, then yeah, I see a lot of value here.
And I think the another example of this would be finance departments. Finance departments are going to produce a model. They're going to spit out a bunch of information, but that thing needs to be checked and tested 6 different ways from Sunday. Like, it just has to be tested a ton. All the numbers have to match up. You can't lose numbers. And I think Great Expectations is a good way of running tests against your data set. So you could run a model for them in finance that the entire model in test is grabbing everything you need before you roll it over to production. But,
Mike, a big point I was going to say, you mentioned that you can run DAX, but really the other big part of the semantic link is you don't have to. And we can put this in the parking lot, but this kind of goes into data science. I can create a data frame off of measures, columns, and tables already in the semantic model. And I only reference the data science because it's mentioned 3 times in the first 2 paragraphs.
I think they're pushing the data science story way too hard at this point. I don't see a lot of data scientists just clamoring to get into Fabric at this point.
I'm ready to roll there. We can put that into the parking lot, but I'm ready to roll there. Especially that the article, like the fact that they're trying to push it. Again, you want to put that in the parking lot, we can reference that, but I'm ready to riggedy roll with that and talk about that.
I see maybe the fact is I see less data science is a good thing to be able to be capable of doing. So one thing I will point out, you're not doing data science on SQL servers. So if you're an organization that has a whole bunch of SQL servers laying around and that's where your data lives, you're not ready for data science, period. End of story. So you're going to need some tooling. It doesn't matter what it is, but you're going to need some tooling that at least enables you to do predictive data science type things on top of your data. Spark is likely that candidate, that compute engine that you need. The notebooks expose this to you. So for one, Microsoft is at least allowing you the ability or giving you the capability to do data science stuff inside Fabric. What I'd like to see more is I'd like to see more of the Azure ML Studio experience coming towards the Power BI experience, so that way you feel more like it. It needs to be better. It gets better. But if you're doing Databricks, if you're doing Fabric now, these 2 tools are 2 tools that incorporate machine learning. If you are a Snowflake user, Snowflake has no plans on their roadmap to build anything about data science. There is no ML. There's nothing in their roadmap that's going to build that experience for you. So if you have that tool, you bought the wrong tool. It's not going to help you get to the next step.
I don't want to say I'm arguing with you here, or I would argue with your statement. But the only thing with the Azure machine learning, which is a great platform, but I think they're pushing the data science because the semantic link library is really finally the bridge between what a lot of data scientists are clamoring to do with a cleaned up model and what's available in Power BI. That's never been before possible. And please tell me a better way that could be done. Because right now, if I can create a data frame, selectively choose the tables and refined model, that is my diamond layer, apparently. And I can now connect to that. Power BI, the model is now just part of the road. It's not the end stop. It's not the final destination. That's huge, man. Like that. This is incredible for data scientists, where 80% of their time they're cleaning data.
Yeah, not disagreeing with you in any way there. I'm not sure data ready for reporting is really in the right format for what data scientists need. My understanding is data scientists typically will like wider, flattened out tables. Data scientists don't typically prefer star schemas of data. So while this is cool, so to me, it's more of like this is a nice to have feature, but I don't think this is oh wow, we need to have this off the shelf for our data scientists. So I'm not sure if I'm there yet. I'd have to see some more use cases and maybe talk some more directly to some more data scientists, because in my opinion, many data scientists that I work with, they're very comfortable working only in Python with whatever they need, and so they're going to go to the rawest form of data, look at that information, and from there they're going to want to build what they want. They're not going to want a super cleaned model like a star schema or what we've built in these data models, because now the data scientist needs to understand the relationships of the data in the semantic model in order to pull stuff out so they can use it.
And you're right.
So I just feel like I feel like the semantic model is designed for reporting. There's aspects of data science that are not going to be there that they would want, and they're going to go back to a silver layer of data and start there. Is my feeling.
You're right about the flat table, the denormalize. That's what they want to work, and they want to work in a single data frame. The only point I'll say is that's what the semantic link actually allows. I can actually pull the semantic model and, in a sense, denormalize with measures, choose the columns, and make a single data frame.
I agree. But you're also adding in all the business logic to get you to there.
Yeah,
and I'm not sure if you're talking pure data scientist, sometimes you need, as a data scientist, you want to peel back those business rules, and you need to say, I don't need the business rules, just show me the data, because there's likely insights that are coming out of that data that's not cleaned by already those pre-designed business rules to just straighten out the data. So, you know what, I'm not going to have a strong opinion on either one of them.
Okay.
I'm not sure I see the use case as strongly as you do yet.
Okay.
Maybe I can be convinced.
We'll keep. I'm sure we're going to keep seeing more blogs around this, but it's interesting that they do push both how much on the data scientist side in the beginning of this article. And one of the quotes again is, Semantic Link can align and grow collaboration between data scientists and business analysts. So that's a huge push, at least from what Microsoft's trying to do.
How much? I mean, we're BI developers. Like it's the bread and butter. You do you play a lot of different roles.
Yeah.
One of the things that is, I guess, I don't know, concerning or doesn't make sense to me is like the third paragraph, where there's such a heavy emphasis of the data scientist playing the role of validating, cleaning, and transforming raw data. Like, data scientists shouldn't be spending tons of their time on data quality.
Oh, it's interesting you're using that persona.
Yes, that's the wrong role for that. If you want the data engineer,
right. You're
from a cost perspective.
You know things. I want you working in models. Like, I want you out of ETL as fast as possible.
Yes.
But I guess the other concerning part I have with this is, like, if in projects that I've worked on with data scientists, there are two main parts that required a lot of emphasis for end customers. The first of those being dumbing down the output to something that people understand, all of the statistical algorithms and models and all the things that you're running data through to produce an outcome. So in some respects, if you're doing an enhancement on the exact same data sets in a model, I could see that this would be valuable. But the second part of this that I guess, while I'm excited about the data quality aspects, raises a level of, like, would data scientists even want to use this, is the rigor and hardening around understanding and ensuring that the data outputs are exactly what they would expect, especially as you're productionizing something.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, like, I've never thought of measures as like that. So, like, and maybe it should be, right? Like, but are we taking a model which is designed for reporting and misusing it for a structured data set that goes into a model.
Yeah. That's my point. That's my point. I feel like we're taking something that has been designed for a very specific purpose, and there will probably be some advantages for pulling that. But I mean, again, if you're a data scientist on this call and you're on the chat here, let us know. Like, let us know. Does this make sense to you? Do you do data sciencey things? Would this be a good place to start? Now, to your point though, Seth, if I'm a business user or I'm a data engineer already and I'm looking to try to explore some predictive things, I would be more apt to use this because I already understand the data. I understand the model. I understand the data engineering that got me to here. Some lightweight predictive things probably would make sense here. But I'm not going to say a data scientist full-fledged is going to love this.
Right. The other part of this though is like, let's say you start leveraging this. Aren't you putting this back into the realm of not like potentially not being able to support the business as quickly as you would need to? Because our concern with the model,
that's, man, I don't know if I follow.
I'm designing a model that supports a bunch of business reports.
Yes.
As people want, as the business evolves, as they want new things,
yep.
That model needs to change.
Oh, and then you would break this thing that the data science guy made.
I'm modifying that model for business needs because it's a model designed for reporting.
Oh, interesting.
I would be terrified to deploy a change if I knew one of our models was using this as a source of information. Like, how much more testing would I need to do to validate that whatever I push out for the business doesn't absolutely screw something up, which would, like,
100%, dude.
Data science and models and the
100%. Well, like, this is why great expectations on this.
Yeah.
It full circled. But here, so 100% right with exactly your point, Seth. Like 100% agree with you. Like, I think the great expectations portion of the semantic. I don't know why I put another extra N or a couple letters in there. Semantic. I have to look at the word literally to say it correctly. But I think you're right, Seth, 100%. Anytime you pick that model, the more people you throw at that model, the more people that are going to expect it to be built a certain way is going to slow down your need to, like, can I make a change? If I'm changing the logic on a measure, that could impact a lot of downstream things. And you've got to be very clear what that means. And when you do, this is where the data ops comes in. Yeah. So I think the use case for great expectations is much better than the data science experience. I think that's just a much more robust, like, we're going to produce tests on top of this data in these different environments, and we're going to review them, and it will tell us when we're out of scope on those data criteria.
So a few fun stats, and I think the misunderstanding here, I think, between us and the article is, in the article there's 12 paragraphs, and data science is mentioned 10 times, and the majority of that's all in the beginning. And I think it needs to be data science parentheses diet. This is not the machine learning studio. This is a data scientist utilizing Python packages. A lot of what I hear from data scientists around the predictive side of correlation side, that can all be done with Python packages. It does not rely on machine learning studio. I'm not saying that's the best solution, but I think that's what Microsoft's referring to here when it comes to data science is, can we do some quick predictive side? We know Power BI is not the best from a predictive point of view. There are DAX measures to do that. There's a lot of workarounds, but that was never Power BI's intention, was the predictive or the correlation side. Do you know what they used for that? Custom visuals, made in R. That was the only way to do forecasting,
and now Python,
in Python. So this has always been something that's not been in the realm of Power BI, the basic data science.
But even thinking about the data flow for just a moment here, right? I do data engineering. I go dev, test, prod. I make a model. The model's in production, right? Data scientist shows up. He uses that model to do some predictive things. Where do you put the output of that data scientist's work, and how do you incorporate that back into what you're doing? You don't want to round robin. Like, it's not, to me, it doesn't seem efficient to go take data out of a data set or semantic model, have the data scientist work on it, Well, then what does he do with it? Where does he put it? Do you build another report and another semantic model that does the machine learning and the predictive pieces? Or do you then go write it back down to a source system so it can get picked back up again and put back in the model? So to me, even thinking about the flow of data doesn't make sense to me. Like, I would rather say, go to the tables that are made in my lakehouse, do the work there, produce your predictive things, and then all of my normal reporting and all of the predictive things can get joined together and then turned into the model. Because if you're going to do predictions, you're going to want to put that right with your regular business data anyways. It does makes no sense to bring all that information to another semantic model or another place where you're doing predictions. I think you're going to want that in your main models.
And the argument here, I just don't. I'm not following, Tommy. Like, one, all the 3 paragraphs describe that this isn't just ad hoc, right? Analysis. Like, two, the harder play is, as a data scientist, we want to plug into the semantic model because all the business logic is there. And I would argue that that goes into our conversation where we want to push that back as far as possible. Before I'm pulling into, I don't like building tons of business logic only in my semantic model for this very reason. It's not repeatable. I can't reuse it.
Yes.
So the artifacts that I'm building related to enterprise efforts, which this is not a business person's model, right? In enterprise realm, all my business logic is in the facts and dimensions I'm building already. Those are artifacts you can plug into
without going to the model.
Right. So I get I now understand and I appreciate the data quality aspects of this.
Yes.
But I'm still struggling with using the semantic link as a source for data science work in general. Because of what we're talking about.
I think my final thought here is, I think the heart of this is, to me, the concept of what Microsoft's foreseeing for the semantic model. Again, and they want this to be, if you had a Sankey diagram, for the Power BI Classic, 100% was data set, semantic model to report.
Yep.
And now I think we're seeing these other arrows, these other bridges, or these other links to other avenues, like the data science part. That's where they're pushing. Are they there yet? No. But the semantic model is now having other avenues, no longer being the end destination. So the heart of this to me is the concept of what a semantic model was, Power BI Classic, which I love that, by the way, the term, Mike, and now Power BI Modern, and what the semantic link's going to be, or the semantic model is going to be. So that's really my final thought, what we're seeing this evolution of.
I will always be Power BI Classic. Seth, any final thoughts, Seth, for you?
I think ultimately it'll be really interesting to see where this goes. Two kind of things. If Semantic Link and the artifacts that we can plug into now include measures, right? And we can stabilize on those and use them outside the realm of what we would normally have done with just reporting. Interesting and cool. Still have some questions about the quality and making sure that those stay static. I think the thing that I'm most concerned about in aspects of this, where, to Tommy's point, we're now going to Sankey and break out a semantic model for its uses, is are we repeating history? If you keep throwing things onto and build these monolithic giant things like warehouses, you're going to slow things down for the business. And if business needs to change and adapt and implement things, and this is what we've been building models for, either wider adoption and usage throughout an organization. Maybe there are certain use cases where it's the model that everybody uses, and this is where you would plug that in. That's maybe 5%. The challenge would be is I wouldn't want to keep building on something that I can't change or would require months of testing before we can get back to the business, and that would be my only concern.
Yeah, I'm going to probably say I think this whole article around Semantic Link is very good. I think this is very helpful for us. Again, I have not resonated with the data scientist experience that Microsoft has been providing through Fabric yet. I don't see the value of it currently. I think data scientists have their own tools that they're happy using, and they'll continue to use those tools until Fabric catches up. Now, all this to say, Microsoft will probably do a better job in the future. I feel like everything we talk about data scientists in the Fabric realm is data scientist light. It's like the business users, the data engineers who are just starting to move into data scientist realms, this makes sense. But I don't think you're going to throw a full data scientist at this and be extremely happy with what's going on here. So I do think the value of Semantic Link is data quality, looking at DMVs and getting data and diagnostics out of your models. If you can start tracking how this, don't underestimate the power of the DMVs that gets data out of it. You can go look at the heat of the quality of columns, or the heat of each column by how much it's used. Wouldn't you like to know how many times, like which columns in your data model are used most often over time? Wouldn't that make sense? This DMV area allows you to extract that information, and you could trend your data, your model over time, column by column, looking at which columns are used the most. This could provide you a really interesting heat map of which columns are most important. And I believe some people have already blogged about it. I can't put my finger on the blog right now, but I think that is worth the just that alone is worth investigating this feature to understand exactly how your model is being used.
So I wish this was a classroom and just seeing you two in the back. Like, I have a question.
Oh boy.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh, if I would pay to be in that class.
Well, I think you would be, Mike and Seth are talking again.
Put your hand down.
Know it all. They just know it all. Just shut up already.
I have a problem with your formula.
Yes, exactly. Anyways, we're allowed to have opinions. Luckily, no one listens to the podcast, so we're all good there. Anyways, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. For those of you who stuck around for the whole thing, we really appreciate your listenership. So thank you so much for listening to this. We really do ask if you found some value from this, if you learned a little bit more about Semantic Link, where it might fit inside the ecosystem of Power BI. We really appreciate you sharing it with somebody else. Let somebody else know on social media. At your holiday party, go ahead and let them know you found this amazing data podcast. It's so good. We'd love it if you would share that as well, and let people know that you found some value from it. With that, Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
Yeah, and this is our last podcast before Christmas. So Merry Christmas. What a better gift to give than a free podcast.
A free Semantic Link.
And you can tell them, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It's a great Christmas gift for us. Helps us out a ton. If you have a question, idea, or topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode, head over to powerbi.tips/podcast. Leave your name and a great question. Finally, join us live every Tuesday, Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all of Power BI Tips social media channels.
This is our 104th gift to you this year. We've been doing so many podcasts twice a week for the whole year. So we hope you've enjoyed our free gift of random knowledge that doesn't really help you in your daily business job.
Of cheddar. Mind-numbing cheddar.
So we hope you've enjoyed that as well. Thank you all so much. There will be 2 more episodes coming up. They will be pre-recorded. So just FYI about that. They're coming out. They'll still be here. So there's a couple more episodes coming for the end of this year. So we appreciate you all as listeners. And we look forward to starting 2024 with you when we see you again. Thank you all very much. We'll see you next time.